Excel is straightforward in Microsoft Power Automate for desktop. Today we will solve an accounting case. The mission is to get the latest currency rates from a web page and write them in the correct places on this sheet. Danish kroner DKK is our base currency. Then in our accounting sheet we have multiple transactions with different currencies. For each row, we want to determine which currency is used, then look up the previous sheet and write the correct exchange rate. Finally, do the calculation currency amount times exchange rate divided by 100 and write it in the amount DKK. My name is Anders Jensen. Let's learn some advanced Microsoft Power Automate for desktop. First, navigate to the course page. There's a link to it in the video description. Then click download the Excel book for the exercises. Now go up here, click the three dots and take download. I will be placing this Excel book on my desktop, so I move it out here. Let me just minimize this so you can see my desktop. Then I make a folder, so I right click, new folder, and I will call this currency RPA like this. Then I move the Excel sheet into here, and then I will get the path of that. Here comes the trick. You can press Shift on your keyboard. I repeat, Shift on your keyboard. Then right click with your mouse, and then you can see a copy as path. We will use that, so click here. Then we go to Power Automate for desktop, where I have been creating a flow. First, we set a variable for the project path. So find a set variable here and drag that one in. We will call this project path. So up here in variable, say project path, that is the name. And then the value, I'll press Ctrl V to paste this one in. Remember to move the quotation marks like this. Then I click Save. Having a variable for this value instead of hard-coding it in my Excel activities in a little while makes my flow more robust, and I can easily change the path when I move the project from my desktop. Let's go do the Excel work. So I find a launch Excel here, and then I drag this one in. This just does launch an Excel instance. Here I want to open up this Excel book that I just downloaded. So I click this drop down and then I say and open the following document. The document path. Well, I use the project path variable that I just created up here. So click this little X and then you can choose this variable. Then that is the project path. Then I just need to refer to the Excel book in there. So I make a backward slash. Then I'll say currency data.xlsx like this. I won't have my instance visible, so I'll untick that. Down here you can see that the variables produced is Excel instance. I can refer to this variable later in the flow, and then I will refer to this instance. Then I click Save. We also need a close Excel. So up here in Actions, find a close Excel and drag that one in. Here you can see that I'm referring to the Excel instance, and in the before closing Excel, I click this drop down and choose Save Document. Then I can click Save like this. So here I just open Excel, close it again. You can try run it to see that this path actually works. We can do that. It is just a very, very quick flow. It doesn't do anything. It just launches the Excel instance and closes it again, but we're using this variable. One challenge as a Power Automate desktop developer is that Power Automate desktop often locks an Excel sheet that we're working on. Yeah, that's kind of crap. We might see it today, but don't worry, it's easy to combat. It's preferred to make sure that Excel is closed before a Power Automate desktop flow starts. So that is, before we're trying to launch it, let's make sure that we have closed all other Excel processes. So here I find a terminate process and drag that one in right between the set variable and the launch Excel. Down here in the process name, I can just type Excel like this, and then I can click Save. So this one will terminate any process that is open before we are launching this Excel. Just make sure that you don't have any important data open because we are just terminating without saving here. Let's inspect the data that we just downloaded. So go to the project folder and open the Excel book here. Here you can see that we are having multiple sheets and we need to find the correct one. The one we are using is called 2a.currencies and it looks like this. So let's grab the sheet name by right-clicking down here, choose rename, Ctrl+C to copy it, and then close it down again, like this. So I move back here, and then I'll say set active Excel worksheet, like this, and move that in just after the launch Excel. So here I can see I'm referring to the Excel instance, and then I can activate a worksheet with a name, and I just got the name, so Ctrl+V to paste that name in, and then click Save. So now I have activated that sheet. I can read from this sheet. So up in the actions, find a read from Excel worksheet and drag it in after the set active Excel worksheet. Again, I'm in my Excel instance and I want to retrieve all available values from the worksheet. So click this one here. In Advanced, choose first line of range contains column names. Yes, our data contains headers, so that is important that you take this one here. Here you can see that we're producing a variable called Excel data, and this is a data table. More about that later. Then we can click Save. So now we're actually doing something. We are closing Excel here in the beginning. Then we are launching it and opening this book. We are setting the active Excel worksheet so we make sure that we read the right sheet. Then we read the data into Excel data, and finally we close it. So again, let's try to run the process. It's always nice to see that whenever we make these steps that our robot works. And it did. You can go over here in variables. In case you don't see it, it might look like this or this. Then you can just click this little X up here. That will get the variables up. Go in Excel data, hover your mouse over this 8 rows and 4 columns, and then double click. That will open up the data. Now you can see that we read the data correctly. And we can start the second part of our case. So we want to, for each one of these rows here in this data table, that is for each currency, we want to get the current rate and the date of that rate. And we're going to the Danish National Bank. So let me just close this one here, move back to the course page, which is here, scroll a little bit down, and there's a link to the Danish National Bank here. So click that. Let me just maximize it again. So I want to navigate here first. So let's go create that. So I'm grabbing this link, at least the beginning of it. So this one here, I copy that one over in Power Automate for desktop. Here I am launching a new web browser, so I choose launch. In case you haven't installed the browser extensions, you can do that. There's a link to a video guide up here in the right corner. In case you have the extensions, we can just pick which browser we want to use. I can recommend using Edge or Chrome, maybe Firefox, but never ever Internet Explorer. That one is outdated. So it's both unstable and unsecure. So don't take that one. We'll take Chrome here. So I take launch new Chrome, drag it in here, just right after the read from Excel worksheet. So here I'm going to launch a new instance, and in the initial URL, I just paste in my address. We could also create a variable for this address in case that this address changes a lot or we're using a lot in the flow, but we're not, so we're staying here. You can see that we can refer to this browser instance by the variable this produces called browser. Then I can click Save. Similarly, I also want to close the browser whenever I'm done again. So I find a close web browser here and drag that one in here. This simply just closes the browser instance called browser, and then I can click Save. Again, we can run the flow and inspect that we're actually able to open up a browser. Here we go, but we're actually closing it again as well. So let me just disable this close web browser for now, so we can just work a little bit in the browser. We will enable it later. And let me click run. This is just to open up the web page. I'm lazy. It's easier to run my flow than to actually find a link elsewhere. Let me maximize the web page. What I want to do now is click the more currencies down here. So in Power Automate for Desktop, right after the launch new Chrome, go up here and then find a click link on web page. Drag this one in here. And here you can see we are left clicking in something in the browser instance. In the UI element, click this drop down. Here we're going to add our UI element. A UI element, and let me just click this first here. A UI element is everything you can see here. In this instance is a browser, but it could also be on your Windows desktop. In that way, we will use the UI automation. But for now, it's browser automation. And you need to go down here so you can see this red thing here, recognize all the UI elements. We are going to the more currencies down here. It's called anchor. You can see that globe. If you press Control on your keyboard, click with your mouse, we have created this UI element. Then I can click Save. So now we're actually clicking on it. I'm going to show you in a few seconds. But first, let's inspect this UI element. Go over here to this stack of papers, and here you can see something called anchor more currencies, which is exactly the UI element that we just created. So first I want to rename it. So I go up here and press either F2 or right click, rename. I will just call this more currencies like this. And then I can double click to inspect it. We won't dig further into this, but this is a selector. A selector is just an address of an element on your screen, and this address looks like this. Very weird. We won't go deeper in it in this section. But in case you want to know more about selectors, click the video up here in the right corner. I can just click save or cancel. We haven't changed anything. So, and let me just show you the data. Now we click the more currencies, or our robot do, and we want the currencies for euro, US dollar, pound sterling, and so forth, all these up here, with these rates here and the current date of the newest rates. So in Power Automate for Desktop, find and extract data from web page. Make sure you take the one under web data extraction and not the one under data extraction. I repeat, take the one under web data extraction. Now drag that in right after the click link on web page. Here we need to open up the web page with the data that we want to scrape. You can see again, now this little red thing comes up here. It's not entirely the same because right before it was UI elements that we're searching for. Here we're searching for things to scrape, and it works a little bit different, but almost the same. I first want the euro name. So I just right click here, then extract element value and take the text here. Then I take the US dollar, extract element value, and now the clever thing comes in. Power Automate for Desktop recognize that this is a pattern, so it just gives us all the rates. This technique will also work when the rates changes, so we will be getting the right rates tomorrow, next week, next year, and so forth. Right now, we're just taking these rates, so I click Finish down here. I will give it another name than data from web page. It's always nice to name our variables well, so we can make sure that we can easily differentiate between the names. This ones I will call QNCs scraped like this, and then I click Save. We can try to run again. Just remember we are opening up a new browser window each time that we are running this robot. That's fine, we can just close it afterwards because we have disabled the close browser. I can close this one manually. Now go over to the variables. In the currency scraped, you can see that our currencies have now been scraped into a data table. It looks very much like you know from Excel. Here we just have one column and then we have 7 rows. The only difference is that we refer to the first row as 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 0 indexed variable, this data table. More about that later. Now let's write out this data to our Excel sheet. And the nice part is that these results, that is in the same order our Excel sheet is designed in. So whenever you create your Excel sheet like here, make sure that you can make your life a little bit easier by having the same order. Let me show you the Excel sheet again. So if I move in here, open up the currency data, here we have it. So you can see euro, US dollar, GBP, Swedish crowns, and so forth. I want to have the rates in the rate column, that is in the D column or the fourth column. It's very, very easy. So let me just close this Excel sheet again and go back to Power Automate for Desktop. Then you find a Write to Excel worksheet here. Drag it in after the extract data from web page. So here, again, I'm writing into my Excel instance. And I know I'm writing into the correct sheet because I specified it up here. The value to write, that is the currencies scraped, which we just created up here. So I click this little X here and double click the currencies scraped. Again, double click this variable called currencies scraped. This is a data table and this will override the entire row. We have nothing there. So we want to write unspecified cell. And then as we talked about, I want to write in the D column. And since we have headers, I want to start in row 2. Then I can click Save. So now we have scraped this currencies and we're writing it back to Excel. Remember to save your flows because Power Automate for Desktop will not auto-save your flows. Let's try to run it again. And meanwhile, I can just close down these browsers with the Danish National Bank so we don't have a lot open. We will enable this close web browser in a little while. Click Run up here. That will launch our flow. Here we go. We navigate to the currencies, we scrape the data, and we close Excel. Let's see if we get the currencies right here in our Excel sheet. So I'll open it here. There you go. You have now scraped it. These 100, those ones were there beforehand. That is because Danish kroner is the base currency. 100 Danish kroners cost 100 kroners. And here you can see $100 cost 752 Danish kroners. And similar with all the other ones. Now let's just fill in the date. That is the date that we can see up here. So let me close this Excel sheet and then go back to Power Automate for Desktop. While we wrote the rates in the D column, we will have dates in the C column. So currencies in D's and the date in C. Again, find and extract data from web page like this and drag it in right after the Write to Excel worksheet. Again, we have to open up a page with the results that we want to scrape. So I want to open this. Go up here. Here you can see both span and TH. Both of them will probably work, but I like to take the inner one. So make sure you take the span, right click, extract element value, and just pick the text and then click Finish. Again, I want to change this so I can easily see what's going on just by looking at the variable name. I will call this date scraped like this, and then I can click Save. So I'm now saving it to the date scraped, and let's try to run the flow again to inspect how the date scraped data will look like. So again, we're just doing the exact same things, except that we're now getting the date. So if I move out here to this date scrape variable, move over here and then double click on it. Now we have our data. So this is again in a data table format. It's only with run column and run row, but it's still a data table. So we'll need to refer it, the data to by that. So the dimension is 1 by 1. And we can refer to this date in a little while by saying 0.0. So the first row and the first column. These are 0 indexed again, so 0.0, that will give us this one. We will take advantage of that, so let me close this one here. Let's just talk about the strategy that we want to use when we are writing the dates back. So let me move into the Excel sheet again. So here we're going to say for each one of these rows, then we will write this scrape date in. So that is one is here in the C column, and we will start by row 2. So again, in an Excel sheet, you say the first row is 1 and then 2. So we will start in row 2, and I can close these ones down. So we're creating a helping variable, and that is just to keep track of the row that we add in the Excel sheet while we are iterating through them one by one. It's a little bit more easy just to see what I'm doing, and then I can explain while we do it. Again, I really hope you do this exercise with me. So find a set variable, drag that in right after the extract data from web page. Here we will call this Excel row index. So Excel row index, and then we will give it the value 2. Because now this will not do anything, but we're using a for each now to iterate through our data. So I'll find a for each, go down here right after the set variable. Here I will iterate through my original data. That is the Excel data. That one was the one with the currencies in. So I'll go click this X, and then I'll say Excel data. This one will be stored into an item that is called QN item. And this is, we're iterating through the rows in this data table called Excel data one by one. And as we progress, we can refer to the QN row by saying QN item. I like to keep my naming convention quite direct so I can see what's going on. This is also best practice. So we do like this. Again, we can refer to the row that we're iterating through by saying currency. So now we're taking all these rows one by one. Nothing is really happening in here. All actions need to go in between for each and end. What I will do is to add 1 to this variable each time this for each runs, because that will keep track of where we are. So I find a set variable again, drag it in the for each. Up here, I'll find the Excel row index. That one is here. And then I will add 1 to whatever value that it might hold. So click this little X, Excel row index, say +1, like this, and then we can click save. So now we're adding 1 to it, and we can use this one when we want to write to each one of the Excel cells. So again, find a write to Excel worksheet and drag that in the start of the for each. So what value do we want to write in? And right now, you see we write to each one of the rows because we have it in this for each. We want to get the date scraped. So I click this X here, that was our data. But as we talked about, we need to say we want the 0.0 coordinates. That one was the cell because this was a data table. So move in here, hard brackets start, say 0, hard brackets ends. This is the row, another hard bracket, 0, hard bracket end. This is the column. So now we have the correct row and column that we're getting our data from. We want to say unspecified cell. Then we say column, that one is C. So that one was the one where the date should go in, and the row, that's why we have this Excel row index. We can now use this supporting variable, say Excel row index. That's it. Then we can click save. One thing I might want to change is this Excel data. I might want to say Excel data currencies because we might have more data in a little while. So what I will do here is right click, rename, say Excel data currencies, do it out here, because then when I click enter, look what's going on right here. Then it will update here and here. So automatically, that's quite clever. Let's try to run the flow again. And we are launching Excel, set the active Excel worksheet and the likes. So here, And right now we can also enable the close web browser so we don't have that open. Let's do that first before we inspect the data. So I'll right click, enable action. So I will place this one right after the first extract data from web page. That is where we are not going to use the browser anymore. Now let me minimize this and I can close down some of these instances and clean a little bit up. Let's open up our data. There you go. You now have the dates and rates.
Yes!
Now for the second part, accounting. Before we inspect this sheet, let me just show you our flow here. We already have a lot of things going on. You can see this will be a quite long flow. Best practice is to use subflows. Subflows are just containers that you can call here from the main, and then we will perform those. Let me show you. So I will go up here to subflows and I'll say new subflow and I'll call this initialization here and then click save. It's empty now. So we want to put things in here and then call this initialization from main. I want the set variable, the terminate processes, the launch Excel. So hold control in and click all these. The set active Excel worksheet, the read from Excel worksheet, the launch new Chrome, and that's it. So all the things that is preparing the data, we're not clicking anything here. We're just opening and reading things. So these 6 here, again, press Control and mark these. Now you can either right click and cut or just press Control X. That one will cut them out. You'll get a lot of errors, that's fine. We will solve these. So go to initialization in here, press Control V. Now you have your actions here instead. So right now we're missing them because nothing calls them from the main. So go in here and then say run subflow like this and drag it in right in the beginning. So here I will just run the subflow that I just created. Click this little drop down and then we're running the initialization. I will not run it now, but try run it. There's really no difference. So what's happening here is that it will perform the main first. Then we'll just run the subflow and we have all the same actions here, these 6. Then when there's no more actions in the subflow, it will jump back here and then we'll perform the rest of the runs. Similarly, so we just got all the currency rates. Let's create a subflow for that. So click this little drop down, new subflow, say get currency rates like this, and click save. So what do I want here? I want, let me just go to main. I want everything from here. And now you can just click this one here and then go down to the end. Before you click that, press shift and then click the end. So I want everything except this first run subflow and this close Excel. Now click Control X again, go to get currency rates and click Control V to paste all these actions in. Then go to main. And we also need to run this subflow. So say run subflow after the initialization and say get currency rates and click save. Finally, we also want an end process. For this, we will be having more actions in it. So subflows, new subflow, and then I'll say end process like this, and then click save. Go to main, mark the close Excel, Control X, go to end process again, Control V, paste it in. We also need to run the subflow from here. So I'll drag this run subflow in right after the get currency rates. And then I'll say end process like that. So a really clean main workflow now with these subflows in. We also want to create a new subflow for the next task, that is accounting. So up here in subflows, I'll say new subflow and then I'll say accounting. Then I can click save. So over here in main, again, run the subflow. Now you want it to be right before the end process, because the end process, that is where all the things happening when we close things down. So here the run subflow, and then I'll say accounting and click save. So in the accounting, we need to read 2 Excel sheets. We need to read these 2A currencies with the updated rates. Those ones are the ones that we just got. Then we need to go to accounting and read whatever's in here. And now the task is that we want to write the exchange rate that we just got here from currencies. So basically just moving him over. And then we're not sure which one of these exchange rates will come in here. We can see euros, Japanese yen, euros, DKK, US dollars, Swiss francs. So we want to write the correct exchange rate in here based on whatever is in here. When we have done that, we're going to multiply the currency amount with the exchange rate to get the amount in Danish kroners. So first we will read this sheet, and then we will read this sheet. Again, we're reading this sheet because we have just updated it. So I go right click here, rename, Control C, just to grab the name again. So in Power Automate for Desktop, in the accounting subflow, find a read from Excel worksheet and drag that one in. So here I'm reading from the Excel instance. I still have the same sheet called currencies activated. We did that in the start, so that is fine. I want to retrieve all the values from the worksheet, and here I'm saying I want to override whatever is in the Excel data currencies again. So I say Excel data currencies, and instead of, you can see right now I'm sitting here, how do I spell currencies? And there's a reason, there's a risk of me spelling wrong, so I can click this little X here, and then I can just choose it here. Then I can click save. So now we have read this into Excel data currencies here in our accounting, and remember this one comes after the get currency rates here in our main. So now we can read from the accounting sheet. So let me just go here, grab this name, because now I'm going to set this as active. So rename, Control C, and then I can just close this one here. So first I'll say set active Excel worksheet. I'm not sure what went wrong here. My computer lagged a bit. So set active Excel worksheet. So in the Excel instance, that is the entire book. And I can just Control V, paste in this sheet name, and click save. Again, I can read from the Excel worksheet. So I go up here. So I'll say read from Excel worksheet like this. And then I again want to say I want all the values from the worksheet. So here I'll say Excel data accounting, and this is why I really want to rename my things well. So I say Excel data accounting, then I can click save. One thing that we were missing here, which is very important. So open up the two reads, go into advanced, click this first line of range contains column names. We always want to do that if we have headers in our Excel sheet, of course. So then we can click save. Now let's save our flow again, just to have it backed up if something happens here. Let's run our flow just to see that everything works. You can run it wherever you are, even though if you are in initialization, accounting, everywhere, it will start with the main and then perform the actions here. So now you can see we actually closed the browser. Now we are writing it in and we're closing. So here, what I want to show you is the Excel data currencies. I can open this one here. Now you can see that this is updated with the current rates and the dates. And again, the Excel data accounting. That one was our data from the accounting sheet. So now we can start by saying we want to filling in the values for the exchange rate first, and then we want to do the calculation. So I want it for each again, and now I will, and remember to go to accounting, I need to iterate through the Excel data accounting. So I find a for each like this, and then I drag this in for each. So I will refer to the Excel data accounting, and that I'll click here again, and double click the Excel data accounting. Again, we'll have a reference name for storing the current row. So instead of this current item, I will call this transaction. Like this, and then click save. So now I'm iterating to each one of the rows of the Excel data accounting. That was this one here. So the strategy here is that for each one of these rows, I want to take whatever in the currency column and then look that up in the actual currency sheet to get the updated exchange rate. So then I can click close. I need a support variable. Again, you remember the counting variable because we are going to write back and do the lookup. So here I find a set variable. Again, we just do it the same thing as we did before. So I'm saying set variable right before the for each. Here I will say Excel row index. So again, we just use the one from before. So Excel row index, and we just remember to reset it to 2 because that one is the first row again in the accounting sheet. Click save. Similarly, drag in the set variable in the end of the for each. Click this little X here, and then we will find the Excel row index. Here we just add 1 to it. So click the X, Excel row index, and to add 1 to it again, go inside here and then say +1. This will add 1 to it. So now we can do our lookup. We look at the currency in the accounting sheet, and then we get the information about what row that is stored in the currencies sheet. Go up here in actions and then find or replace like this data table and drag that in here for each. So the data table that we want to look in, that is the Excel data currencies. That one was the first one where we data scrape the data to. So click here. Search mode is fine. And now what text do we want to use? And that is what text do we want to look for? Well, we want to say in the current row, that is a transaction. We can refer to that by saying this little X here. Let me do that first. And then I want to say, I also want whatever was in the, and I forgot the name, so we can just open it again. In here in the accounting, I want to look in the currency column. That one is this one. So I want to say, in the current row, Euro, Japanese yen, look up that in the currency sheet. So let me just close this one here. And in transaction, made a hard bracket, single quotation mark, say currency, single quotation mark, and then a hard bracket. Go down to search by. We can just limit it to a column here. And that column in the first sheet, and again, let us open that. It's called ISO. So we're looking in the ISO, and then like here. And this one we can just say ISO. Remember, just to recap this, we are looking in the data table currencies. And the value that we're looking for, we find that in the current row that when we're iterating through the Excel data accounting. And this one will have a data table of matches. So in here, I can just say ISO. And again, we could argue that we actually could only find one match instead of all matches. But we could actually do a check later on to see if we have an error here. But for now, we just take all matches. We will only find one, but that is fine. We will get used to work with data tables, and that is also the scope of this lesson. Now let's just click run again and see that we can actually get the matching row. So here we are launching and we are iterating through. This one is where we are scraping the data. Now we are taking each transaction and do a lookup. And let's just inspect the data table of matches ISO. So if I double click here, it says that for our last transaction, then the result in the currencies table is in row 5. And let me just show you the transactions. So the last transaction, that is purchase server from Swiss IT, and that is Swiss franc. So it says that Swiss franc is in the 5th position of the currencies data table. So I go back here, then I find the Excel data currencies, go in here, and yes, in number 5 we have Swiss francs. So now we just now we have the row number, we can get the data back and write it into the correct place in the Excel sheet. So, and again, let me open up the data table of matches ISO. We want to go into 0.0 to get this value. That is the same for each one of the results. I click close. I go to accounting. So now I have found this data table of matches ISO. Then I can just go up here. I need to convert it to, because what I'm going to do here is that I'm taking this row number and converting it into a number. This looks weird because it was a number, but since it is from the Excel in the data table, it is an object. So I'll find a convert text to number, that one was here, and drag it in. So I want to go to the data table matches ISO. And again, I will say 0.0. And this exercise is so good. I hope you do it because you'll learn a lot by referring to data tables. So here I say 0.0. The variables produced, let's just rename that to something meaningful. QNC row like this. And then click save. So now we have the QNC row in a number format. Now we use that row number here. So find in another write to Excel worksheet and drag that one in below here. So this is the Excel instance. What value do we want to write? Well, we want to say, I want to look something up in the Excel data QNCs. So I'll say, click this X, Excel data QNCs. Then I just need to specify, well, I need a row like this, and then I need a column like this. So something needs to go in here. And I know that it will give us an error when we click save here, that's fine. Go over to the Excel data QNCs. Because what I want to do here is that I'll say for the row, I will use the QNCs row. Remember that was the 5th here. So this one is the row I'm going to look in. And then I want to look in the 4th column. And again, it's 0 indexed, so I'll say 0, 1, 2, 3. So it will look like this. Again, open the write to Excel worksheet. So in the first one, I will say whatever I called it up here, QNC row. So I'll say QNC row, and in here I'll say 3. That's it. So where do I want to write it back? Well, that was and again, I just click save, so we're completely sure where we're going to write it back to. I want to write it back into Excel data accounting. Well, let me open this. And here, I want to write it back into here. So that is column A, B, C, D, E, and we can refer to them by letters because I'm writing back to the Excel and not this data table here. So write to Excel worksheet, I'll say column E, and then I will use this Excel row index again that we created up here. So I'll click this X here, and I'll say Excel row index, and then just click save. So now we are writing the correct QNC rates over to the accounting sheet. Let me just launch it here. Here we are opening it, and we are performing the actions, closing the browsers, and it's quite satisfying just to see the robot works while we sit here. So no errors, at least the robot don't stop, not yet, and that's it. Let's go inspect the data. Are we actually doing what we want? There you go. We now have the exchange rate, and we still have the correct data over here. So now we just need to do some calculation. So here I just close and I go to accounting again. So after here, I will take the values from the Excel sheet and then I want to do the calculation. So here again, I'll need to find to convert text to numbers. So convert text to numbers, drag that one in here. The first one I'm going to convert to, that is the amount. So I will call this one here currency amount like this. And then I just need to say, I want to look in the transaction. That is the current row. So I can find that one here. And then I can say hard bracket start, quotation marks. And then I will have my column name, which I'll find in a few seconds. Then another quotation mark and then hard bracket end. Let's go find whatever the column name is. That is where I want to take the value from. And that one is here, the currency amount. So I'll just do this, Control C, just to make sure I don't misspell it. So then I go in here, in the single quotation marks, I'll paste in the currency amount, and then I can click Save. So again, I just need to have the exchange rate out, and I just calculate it up here. So let me just move here. Let me grab this expression like this, copy. Then I can just click Save or Cancel, doesn't matter. Drag in another convert text to number, paste it in here. And here we can call this exchange rate, because that's what it is, exchange rate, like this, and click Save. Finally, we can do the calculation. And that is this one here times this one, that will give us the amount. So again, before we close it, let's just delete every data to see that everything works when we start the robot. So here I'll just save it and I will clear it. So what we do now is just to write the data back to Excel for the last column. So here, write to Excel worksheet and drag that one in. So what value do we want to write? Here I need to do a calculation. I'll say currency amount times exchange rate. Take the X here, currency amount here, and inside these ones here, I can make a space. That doesn't really matter. I say multiply by exchange rate. That was the name of the variable here. Then I just need to divide it by 100. So where do I want to write it in? Well, that has to be the column F. Let me again open it here. So in the accounting, that will be the column F here. And then in the Excel row index, that is for each one of these rows. Close, go here. So the column, that was F. And then I'll say Excel row index like this. Then I can click Save. Now just save the entire project just to make sure that we have it back up. And now we just run the robot to see everything actually works, that we have created all the right actions and that we can write it back to Excel. And then we're going to use to create some exciting 4-eyes checks and validations, but more about that in 1 minute, when we just need to see that this robot actually works. Go into the Excel sheet, open the currency data. There you go. Now we have our data. So that's it. That's how easy it is to do accounting here in Power Automate for Desktop. Of course, we could have made it much more advanced, but for now, this is quite advanced, and I hope you learn a lot. But let's do the checks. We want to send an email each time an amount is above 100,000. So it's actually only this one here. Then we want to send an email to compliance. So each time that these two times together, each time those ones are above 100, then we want to send an email. So let's create that. We just close it here. So I need to, in initialization, I will launch an Outlook instance to send my email. Drag in the launch Outlook. You can just move it here, for example. This one will create an Outlook instance. Then click Save. Similarly, in the end process, we will have a close Outlook like this, and then in the end process, I'll drag that one in. That will close it. So now we can start to send this email. I want to create a subflow for the check. So new subflow, and then I'll say 4-eyes check like this, and then I'll say save. Here I want to ask a question, and I want to call this subflow from accounting just here. So actually we can do that first. So I can say run subflow. So this one will call the 4-eyes check. I'll do that for each one of the rows. Then I'll go in here and then come back here. So in the 4-eyes check, I will find an if. Not sure what happened there. It disappeared. So here, and then I'll drag in here. So now I'll just say, again, I'll do the same expression as before. I will say currency amount. Then I'll say times exchange rate. And then I'll say divided by 100. If that is, choose the operator here. If that is greater than 100,000, then we'll do something. So this one just evaluates. Is this one greater than 100,000? Then do something. And we know it's only the last row, but it could be more. So find a send email message to Outlook. Take this one here. Drag it in. So now we can do it. The account, that is the account that you're using in Outlook, the data file name, mine is this one here. And who do I want to send it to? Well, I want to send it to the compliance department, but since it's only me and my wife in this company, I think it's nice just to send it to myself and don't spam her at least. Subject, well, I'll say large amount like this, and then we'll have a body. Here I'll say hello compliance, and let's call it her Carly, like this. I found a large transaction in the, and then I'll say to a accounting sheet. That one was the name of all the transactions at row index. And we have the row index. That was the Excel row index. So I'll just find it here and I'll use it here in my email. Then I'll say kind regards, your RPA robot. Then I can click save. Now let's try to run it again and just see that we can actually send this compliance email. So I will fast forward to the end so you don't have to see this once more. And not quite to the end. If you like these kind of videos, please give the video a thumbs up. That will really help me a lot. And actually, since we sent it the email and then we closed the Outlook, I didn't get to see the email. So let's just right click here, disable action, and let's just try to run it again. So we make sure that we don't close the Outlook. But we will do that in the robot when it's actually in production. Means that we will clean up what the robot has done. So everything looks fine on either the computer, the server, or wherever we run these RPA processes. So that's it. And here, I'm just dragging in here. Here we have our email. So far, so good. We can do all sorts of error handling. So let's do one check to see if a description is empty. And instead of sending all these emails each time that we see something is wrong, then just add them all to a log and then send that log to one mail. Only one email. That is best practice, and we'll send that email when the robot ends in the end process. So that was a lot of things. First, let's just create a mistake here. So what I want to do, I just want to delete one of these. Let's take this one here. You can pick whatever you want. So I want to do a check if this one is missing this value. You can do all sorts of check. This is just to show you how you can do checks. So let me just save the data and then close it here. So I go back here. The first thing I want to do is to create the log variable. And to that log variable, I'll just add these error messages each time they occur. So in initialization, I want to use the current date and time in that log. So let's go grab those first. So find a get current date and time here and drag those one in. I want to drag them in right after the set variable here. So get current date and time. This will just give us the current system time. Do that. Then we will have a convert date time to text like this. I will need to find it here. Convert date time to text. So this will take this date time, convert it to text so that we can use it. The date time to convert. That is the current date and time from here. I'll do this. And here I need to pick a format for my date time. I will just take full date time, long time. It will look like this. It will get stored into the formatted date time, so I can use that. Now let's create a variable for the log message. So I'll find a set variable like this, and I drag it in here. So I want to create a new variable called, I can call it log. And then in the value, I can say the robot ran at, and then I'll use the time up here. I'll just say formatted date time like this. Then I can say with the following results like this and a colon. Then I can click save. So now I've started my log variable, and let's fill something into it. So go into the for ice check. So the email, I want to move that to the end process. So Control X, go to the end process, click here, and then click Control V. Now move in here, and let me just copy this one out here. So this was the error message whenever we have a large transaction. I'll copy that one here. And in the for ice check, I'll now add to my log variable instead. So find a set variable, add to the log variable. So I will say I will add whatever is in the log variable first. You remember we had this date and that the robot ran. So I'll say whatever is in the log. And it can also be previous error messages that we have here. Then I will say whatever is in the log. Then I'll move down here. Let's have a limiter here. So then I will say this. I'll just add, I found a large transaction. This is the exact same log message as before. Then I can click save. So now we're doing the check to see if a description is empty. Find an if. Here. Drag that if in here. So now we're going to say, and because, let me just click save and get the arrow here. Because we're calling this for ice check from this for each here in the accounting, we can refer to the transaction item and then say, take the current row and then look in the description to see if that is empty. So in for ice check, open up the if again. So take the transaction like this. And then in hard bracket, quotation mark, say transaction, single quotation marks, hard bracket end. Then we want to say, is this one empty? So this one called empty. Is that empty? Then do something. And again, we will just set a variable and we will set the log variable. So hopefully we have created it right. So we'll find a set variable here and drag that one in here. Here I'll find the log message like this here. And then I'll say whatever is in the log variable. So again, I'll use that one here. And then I want to say in the next line, the description is empty in the accounting sheet at row index, and then we will just use the Excel row index again here, and then I can click save. So now we have we're doing these two things. Now we just need to write it out in the email in the end. So in the end process here, move into this email. So instead of this fixed error message, delete it and then use the log. Click save. Now let's try to run the robot and let's just save it. This is the final run, so hopefully everything works. Otherwise we have work to do. Again, if you want to see a specific use case solving your problem, then let me know in the comment below and I might pick yours to solve next week. So, oh, isn't it just beautiful to look at? And here, yeah, we had the error. We said transaction. This should actually be description. So again, even me, I make these mistakes and I choose to include them in the video because I like to show that every developer makes these mistakes during development phase. You just need to know how to fix them. So no problem if you do these. You can see I also do these things. And let's just try to run it again. So we are launching Excel, setting the active sheet, blah, blah, blah. And you'll have to hear me talk. But again, know how to solve your development errors. And absolutely no problem in making these errors. You can see that we all do it. So now we close the Excel sheet, and we just need to see that we have created a log message. So let me just grab in my email from the other screen. Let me open it here to you. There you go. We have now a nice log to the compliance department with the dates here. Then we have the description is empty in 2A, accounting sheet at row index 5, and then we found a large transaction at the index 8. Great job. This can be done much faster and more robustly. Watch this video up here about REST API calls and XML parsing in Power Automate for desktop.